The Galactic Council Room was a vast chamber, bathed in the blue glow of holographic screens that floated above the long curved table. Alien species from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss the future of the universe, each one representing an advanced civilization that had long surpassed humanity's primitive ways. At the center of the room stood a large floating hologram, a detailed display of Earth's warships. The aliens around the table couldn't help but laugh as they observed the outdated designs. These ships were nothing more than relics of a forgotten era, far behind the technology of the galactic powers. The representatives from the Zethar Dominion, a race known for their superior intellect and strength, mocked Earth's fleet without mercy. "Look at these ancient vessels," sneered Commander Vorn, the leader of the Zethar fleet. "Primitive in every way. It's almost sad that we have to waste time with such an inferior species." His voice echoed across the chamber, drawing laughter from the other alien leaders. One of the other council members, a pale-skinned alien with elongated limbs, chimed in. "It's amusing how the humans believe they can compete in the galactic arena. If war ever breaks out, it will be over before it even begins." The laughter filled the room, and the humans seated on the far side of the table shifted uncomfortably. Despite the mockery, Captain Marcus Kane remained calm, his expression unreadable. He was the one who had represented humanity in this high-stakes meeting. But today, he was not just defending Earth. He was holding his ground, knowing that humanity's true strength lay in secrecy. The council members took turns speaking, each one emphasizing the hopelessness of the humans' position. Earth was a backwater planet, barely advanced enough to be a footnote in galactic history. Even their most advanced technology seemed like nothing more than crude tools compared to the ships and weaponry of the other species. The aliens laughed at the idea of humanity ever challenging the established order. But Commander Vorn was not laughing. His eyes narrowed as he observed the humans closely, sensing something unusual in their stoic silence. "I'll give you a choice, Earth," he said, his tone now colder. "Surrender to the Dominion, and we will allow you to live under our protection. Refuse, and we will destroy you and your primitive fleets. It's your decision." The room went quiet. The alien leaders waited for Earth's answer. Captain Kane stood up, his tall, muscular frame imposing as he faced the council. "We will never surrender," he said firmly. "We are humans, and we fight for our future. If you want to see how far our resolve goes, then you will have to force us into submission." His voice was steady, full of determination. There was a moment of silence as the alien leaders exchanged looks, clearly taken aback by the humans' defiance. Commander Vorn's lips curled into a smirk. "Very well, human," he said. "Prepare to face your fate." As the council meeting ended, the aliens seemed to believe that Earth was no real threat. They underestimated humanity's tenacity, thinking their power would crush the humans without a second thought. But little did they know, a war was brewing beneath the surface, one that would change the course of history. The Zethar Dominion's attack on Earth came without warning. The alien fleet, vastly superior in numbers and technology, launched a swift strike against a peaceful human colony on the outskirts of the solar system. The colony, home to thousands of innocent civilians, was obliterated in mere minutes, reduced to nothing more than debris and ashes. The Zethar made their message clear. They were serious, and they intended to show humanity their place in the galaxy. Humanity had been warned, but the attack on the colony shook the planet to its core. The people of Earth, who had never faced an enemy of such strength, found themselves in a state of disbelief. How could they fight back? Their fleets were far weaker than the advanced warships the aliens commanded. Yet, in the face of this devastating blow, a fire ignited in humanity's heart. On Earth, in a command center hidden deep underground, Captain Kane watched the destruction of the colony unfold on his screen. He stood in silence, his jaw clenched, fists clenched at his sides. The voices of his officers and military leaders buzzed around him, but he couldn't focus on them. All he could think about was the devastation. His people had been attacked without mercy, But there was no fear in his heart, only rage. The humans had been underestimated, and that would be their biggest mistake. As the military leaders in the command center debated their next steps, Captain Kane quietly issued orders to activate the secret project. Beneath Earth's surface, away from prying eyes, the humans had been building their response. A fleet of advanced warships, equipped with technology that the aliens had no idea existed. Cloaking devices, advanced AI, and devastating railguns were just the beginning of what humanity had been working on in secret. These ships were not the outdated, slow-moving vessels the Zethar had mocked. These ships were humanity's true weapon. But the aliens didn't know that yet. The scene cut to space, where the remains of the human colony still floated in the vacuum, a silent testament to the cruelty of the Zethar Dominion. The alien fleet, having achieved their objective, began to move away, assuming that humanity would collapse under their overwhelming strength. But what the Zethar didn't know was that Earth was not a planet that would simply lie down and die. Captain Kane watched from his flagship as his warship powered up for the first time. "The real war starts now," he muttered under his breath. His voice was calm, but the fury behind his words was unmistakable. Humanity had been underestimated, and now they would show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of. The ships in the new human fleet began to move into formation, cloaking devices activating, rendering them invisible to the naked eye. The Zethar, far from knowing they were about to face a counterstrike, believed the humans to be defeated. Their arrogance blinded them to the fact that Earth's retaliation was already in motion. The humans were coming, and they were not the weak species the aliens had laughed at. They were the last thing the Zethar would ever expect. The camera pulled away from Captain Kane's ship as the fleet of advanced human warships moved silently through space, ready to strike back at the heart of the Zethar Dominion. They had been attacked, but now it was time to show the galaxy what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The screen faded to black, the sound of engines roaring to life filling the void. The tension in the command center was palpable. Humanity had been provoked, but now, Captain Marcus Kane and his team were ready to show the galaxy that Earth was not the helpless underdog the aliens believed it to be. In the depths of a secret military base, Dr. Elena Vargas, a brilliant engineer, stood before a massive holographic screen. She was reviewing the final details of the warship that would change the tide of the conflict. It wasn't just any ship. It was Earth's first true war machine, designed to counter the overwhelming might of the Zethar Dominion. Dr. Vargas had worked tirelessly on the project, alongside a small team of engineers, developing cloaking devices, AI systems, and railguns capable of piercing through the most advanced alien shields. This was no ordinary ship. It was a game-changer. The human fleet, initially mocked for its outdated vessels, now had the upper hand. The Zethar Dominion, with all their superior technology, had no idea what was coming. The first warship, named the Phoenix, gleamed under the dim light of the hangar bay. Its sleek, black exterior was lined with advanced weapons, and its engines hummed with power. The cloaking devices, still untested in real combat, shimmered around the ship's hull. Inside, Captain Kane paced, his hands clenched into fists as he stared at the tactical display. His mind raced with thoughts of the upcoming confrontation. The Zethar had attacked the colony, thinking that Earth would crumble under their assault. Now, it was time to turn the tables. Dr. Vargas entered the room, her eyes filled with determination. She walked up to Captain Kane, who was deep in thought. "It's ready," she said. "We're good to go. The Phoenix is fully operational." Kane turned to her, his gaze hardening. "Let's show them what we've got." The time had come. The small fleet of human warships, led by Captain Kane aboard the Phoenix, slipped silently into the darkness of space. The cloaking devices activated, rendering the ships invisible to the Zethar fleet. The humans were prepared for their first real confrontation with the Dominion, and they would do it on their terms. The Zethar fleet, meanwhile, continued their patrol, blissfully unaware of the danger that lurked just beyond their detection range. The humans had done their homework, and their intelligence suggested that the Zethar had become complacent after their initial victory. The first skirmishes had been a fluke, they thought. There was no way the humans had anything that could stand against the might of their fleet. But they were wrong. Captain Kane's voice crackled over the intercom. All ships, initiate the attack. Lock weapons on the Zethar patrol group ahead. We're taking them by surprise. The fleet of cloaked ships moved in, their targeting systems locking on to the unsuspecting Zethar ships. At the same time, the AI systems on each ship powered up, calculating the most efficient attack patterns. The railguns on the Phoenix hummed, ready to fire. As the human ships decloaked in a flash of light, the Zethar ships were caught completely off guard. The Zethar had no time to react as the human ships unleashed a barrage of high-powered railgun fire. The alien shields, designed to withstand the most advanced weaponry, buckled under the intense pressure of the human assault. Explosions lit up the dark void of space as Zethar ships were torn apart by the unexpected attack. The Zethar commanders scrambled to issue orders, but the damage was already done. In less than 5 minutes, the humans had destroyed several Zethar warships, a devastating blow to their pride. The Zethar fleet, who had laughed at humanity's so-called primitive ships, now found themselves facing a force they hadn't anticipated. The Phoenix and its accompanying fleet had achieved the impossible. They had destroyed multiple alien ships, and the Zethar had no idea how. The aliens tried to retaliate, but the humans had already disappeared into the shadows of space, cloaking devices reactivating to make them invisible once again. The Zethar sensors and tracking systems, built to detect enemy ships from light years away, were useless against the human fleet. The humans had played their cards perfectly, and the Dominion was left scrambling to recover from the unexpected blow. Back at the command center on Earth, a sense of victory spread among the human officers. The first battle had been won, but Kane knew it was only the beginning. The Zethar were not going to back down after losing a few ships. They would retaliate. Fury would be their response. Dr. Vargas stood beside Kane, watching the tactical readouts. "They'll send everything they have now, won't they?" she asked. Kane nodded. "We've just woken the beast. Expect their full fleet to be on its way." The Zethar Dominion was indeed furious. The Zethar commanders had assumed the loss of a few ships was an anomaly, but now it was clear. Humanity was not the weak species they had believed them to be. Commander Vorn was livid. He stood in the center of the command deck aboard his flagship, his face twisted in anger. The loss of several ships was a disgrace, one that the Zethar could not allow to stand. It was time for Earth to feel the full force of the Dominion. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," Commander Vorn ordered, his voice cold and calculated. "We are going to Earth. This ends now." The Zethar Dominion's fleet, consisting of hundreds of warships, was now on its way to Earth. The humans' victory in the initial skirmish had only enraged the Dominion. They no longer saw Earth as a minor annoyance. They saw it as a threat that needed to be eradicated. The Zethar were coming with everything they had. No more playing around. This would be a war of annihilation. Back on Earth, the human leaders were preparing for the worst. The loss of so many Zethar ships had only escalated the conflict. Now, humanity's final defense fleet had to take up the challenge. The fate of Earth rested on the shoulders of Captain Kane and his fleet. Kane stood before his officers in the war room, his face set in stone. "We've already shown them we're not to be underestimated. Now we hold the line. The Zethar think they can crush us, but they don't know what we're capable of. We'll make them regret ever mocking us." The countdown to the final battle had begun. The human fleet, now fully equipped and ready for the oncoming war, stood at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, preparing for the Zethar's retaliatory assault. In just a few hours, Earth would face its most crucial test. As the countdown clock ticked down, Captain Kane looked at Dr. Vargas one last time. "It's all come down to this." Dr. Vargas nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We've got this, Kane. Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do." And with that, the countdown continued, and Earth's final defense fleet took position. waiting for the storm to come. The war had been unleashed. The final confrontation had arrived. The Zethar Dominion's fleet, a massive armada of warships, hung like a storm cloud over Earth's orbit. Their objective was simple: to wipe out humanity's final defense and leave no trace of Earth's civilization. In response, Captain Marcus Kane stood firm, his eyes focused on the screen in front of him. The Phoenix, along with Earth's entire fleet, was prepared for this moment. Humanity's survival was at stake. The Zethar ships were imposing, massive and brimming with advanced weaponry, but humanity had the element of surprise on their side. They had already demonstrated their ability to use cloaking technology and devastating railguns, which had torn through the Zethar fleet in their first skirmish. But now, the stakes were far higher. Earth had no more time to hide. The battle would be fought in the open, and it would determine whether humanity would endure or fall to the Zethar Dominion. As the Zethar fleet descended upon Earth's atmosphere, the air crackled with anticipation. The human fleet, though outnumbered, was strategically positioned, waiting for the signal to engage. Each warship was equipped with cloaking devices, railguns, and AI-assisted targeting systems. The Zethar might have technology that was more advanced, but humanity had ingenuity, determination, and a willingness to fight for their survival. Captain Kane stood at the helm of the Phoenix, his hand steady on the controls. His crew, an experienced group of soldiers and engineers, was ready. Dr. Elena Vargas, now more than just an engineer but a leader in the fight, stood beside him, watching the skies. The countdown was over, and the battle was about to begin. "Engage," Kane barked, his voice sharp with authority. The human fleet activated its cloaking systems and launched forward, moving swiftly and silently through the dark expanse of space. The Zethar, expecting to overpower the humans with their superior firepower, were caught off guard once again. As the human fleet decloaked and unleashed a barrage of railgun fire, the first Zethar ships exploded in a violent burst of light. The Zethar's advanced shields, which had seemed invincible just days before, were no match for the human weapons. Human ships and Zethar ships alike collided in space, their explosive exchanges lighting up the cosmos. The Zethar retaliated with their own advanced weaponry, sending waves of drones and missiles toward the human fleet. But humanity's warships had been designed for this very moment. AI-controlled turrets whirred to life, shooting down the incoming fire with precision. Railguns fired in rapid succession, punctuating the void with each shot as they tore through enemy ships. The battle was relentless. Zethar ships launched wave after wave of attack, sending drones to swarm the human fleet. But each time the drones came, they were met with the fierce defense of the human warships. The close-quarters combat was brutal, with both sides firing in rapid succession, their ships crashing into each other in a chaotic dance of destruction. The battlefield was a nightmare of explosions, debris, and flickering lights as the two fleets fought for dominance. In the midst of the chaos, one of Kane's closest friends, Lieutenant Bonner, fought valiantly to defend the Phoenix. Bonner had been with Kane through thick and thin. They had fought side by side on countless missions, and his loyalty had always been unwavering. But today that loyalty would cost him everything. Bonner's ship was taking heavy fire from Zethar drones. His shields were down, and his engines were failing. The Zethar were closing in for the kill, and there was no time left for evasive maneuvers. In a moment of desperation, Bonner made the ultimate sacrifice. He engaged his remaining thrusters and rammed his ship directly into the swarm of Zethar drones, buying Kane enough time to break free from the assault. As Bonner's ship exploded in a flash of light, Captain Kane's heart sank. He had just lost one of his closest friends. The pain of the loss was overwhelming, but Kane quickly pushed it aside. There was no time for grief. The battle was far from over, and the Zethar were still pressing their attack. "We fight for him," Kane said, his voice thick with emotion. "We fight for Bonner." The words were more than a rallying cry. They were a promise. Kane would not let Bonner's death be in vain. The human fleet pushed forward, rallying around the loss of one of their own. The Zethar, still struggling to comprehend the humans' ability to fight back, faltered. Their advanced technology, which had once seemed insurmountable, was now being tested by the unrelenting resolve of humanity. As the battle raged on, Kane's thoughts were consumed by the loss of Bonner. But he knew that giving in to grief would be a disservice to his friend. He had to keep fighting, for Bonner and for every person on Earth who was depending on him. The Zethar, for all their might, were beginning to crack. Their superiority in numbers and technology was no longer enough to guarantee victory. The humans had adapted. Their tactics, once thought primitive, were now proving to be more effective than the Zethar had ever imagined. The Zethar had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The human fleet, though battered and bruised, was still standing. The Zethar, despite their technological advantage, were now losing ground. The battlefield was a chaotic mess of exploding ships, fire, and smoke, but there was one thing that was clear. Humanity had found its strength. The Zethar fleet was on the defensive, and for the first time since the war had begun, it looked like the tide might be turning in humanity's favor. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Zethar unleashed their trump card. A massive warship, larger than anything the human fleet had ever seen, emerged from the shadows of space. Its weapons were charged and ready, and it was headed straight for Earth. The Zethar had been saving this weapon for the decisive moment, the moment when humanity had been foolish enough to think they had won. As the massive warship charged toward Earth, Captain Kane's mind raced. There was no time to think. He had to act. The Phoenix was already battered, and the rest of the fleet wasn't in much better shape. But if they were going to stop the Zethar, they had to take down this final warship. There was no other choice. Everyone, target that ship, Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the comms. The remaining human warships focused all their firepower on the approaching Zethar warship. Railguns fired, missiles flew, and AI-controlled turrets locked on to the enemy ship. But the Zethar warship's shields were unlike anything humanity had faced before. The blasts bounced off harmlessly, and it continued its approach, intent on annihilating Earth. But humanity had one final trick up their sleeve. Dr. Vargas had designed a special weapon, a last-ditch effort to break through even the strongest of shields. As the Zethar warship drew closer, the Phoenix fired a concentrated blast from the ship's railguns. The shot was perfect, cutting through the Zethar shields and hitting the warship's core. The explosion that followed was blinding, and for a moment, it seemed like the very stars themselves had exploded. The Zethar warship was gone, disintegrated into nothingness. The remaining Zethar forces, now without their leader and their most powerful weapon, began to retreat. The human fleet had won, but it had come at a terrible cost. Many lives had been lost, and the battle had taken everything from them. But as Captain Kane stood among the wreckage, he knew that humanity had survived. They had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and they had overcome it. "We've won," Kane said softly, his voice filled with both relief and sorrow. "But we'll never forget what we lost." As the human fleet began to regroup, Earth's survival was assured. But the scars of the battle would last forever. Humanity had proven itself to be more than just primitives. They were survivors. And the Zethar would never forget the day they underestimated Earth. The aftermath of the battle had left Earth's defenders battered but not broken. The Zethar fleet had been pushed back, their forces in disarray, but there was no time to celebrate. The Zethar commander, Vorn, had escaped, and his promise of revenge hung in the air like a dark cloud. Earth's victory, while significant, had been costly. The Zethar might have been temporarily defeated, but they were far from finished. Captain Marcus Kane stood before his officers, his face grim but determined. The next move was crucial. The Zethar, though wounded, would not stop until humanity was crushed. Kane knew that they couldn't rely on brute force alone. They needed strategy. This was where humanity's ingenuity would once again be tested. "We've proven we can fight," Kane began, addressing the group. "But this is far from over. We need to get smarter. It's time to put them in a position where they can't fight back. We lure them in, make them think they've won, and then we strike." The plan was risky, but it was their best chance. Earth's warships were strong, but they were outnumbered. The Zethar still controlled vast stretches of space, and their flagship, the Tyrant, was still intact, commanding the fleet from its secure position. If they could take down the flagship, they would take down the heart of the Zethar war machine. But doing that meant they had to play a dangerous game of deception. Kane's strategy was simple but brilliant. Use Earth's own resources as bait. The decoy fleet would appear to be a group of weak, vulnerable ships, perfect targets for the Zethar to chase. It was a trap, one that would lead the Zethar right into a heavily fortified orbital minefield, hidden just beyond Earth's outermost defense perimeter. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Elena Vargas asked, her voice laced with concern. "If the Zethar don't take the bait," Kane nodded firmly. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. We take risks, and we take them now. We can't afford to let them regroup. This is our best shot." The decoy fleet would be made up of older, outdated ships, deliberately weak in appearance and slow in movement, designed to lure the Zethar into the trap. Meanwhile, the real fleet, cloaked and hidden, would wait in the shadows, ready to strike when the Zethar flagship got too close to the minefield. Kane's plan relied on surprise, deception, and the element of fear. The Zethar had already underestimated humanity once. They would do it again. The real battle was about to begin. The stage was set, and the tension was palpable. The decoy fleet, commanded by Admiral Jacobs, began its slow, deliberate journey across the solar system, appearing vulnerable to anyone watching from afar. The Zethar fleet, ever hungry for victory, took the bait. The Tyrant and its fleet followed, confident in their superiority, unaware that they were being led into a deadly trap. As the Zethar flagship followed the decoy fleet toward the outer edge of the minefield, Kane and his officers waited, the silence in the command room deafening. Everyone knew what was at stake. Failure was not an option. The first signs of trouble came when the Zethar ships began to accelerate. They were closing in on the decoy fleet, their weapons primed for attack. The tension was rising. One wrong move could ruin everything. But just as the Zethar thought they had the upper hand, the human fleet made its move. In a flash, the real human fleet decloaked. Ships emerged from the darkness of space, their cloaking systems flickering off to reveal their true positions. Railguns roared to life as they fired on the Zethar ships, catching the aliens completely off guard. The Zethar flagship, the Tyrant, turned sharply, trying to shield itself from the sudden onslaught. But it was too late. Explosions erupted across the battlefield as human warships, cloaked and waiting, launched a surprise attack. The Zethar fleet was in disarray. The decoy ships had already started their retreat, and the real human fleet was attacking with everything it had. Railgun fire lit up the void, streaking through the dark expanse of space as the humans tore through Zethar ships one by one. The Zethar were unprepared, their advanced shields failing to protect them from the unexpected attack. Kane's fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, each ship firing with precision, exploiting the Zethar's weaknesses. The Zethar, who had once laughed at humanity's primitive technology, were now struggling to keep up. The minefield, which had been their undoing, had started to glow, ready to unleash its deadly payload. The Zethar flagship was in a desperate retreat. Commander Vorn, his face a picture of anger and disbelief, ordered his fleet to scatter. The humans had outsmarted them, and now they were paying the price. But as the Zethar flagship began to move away, Kane knew the battle wasn't over yet. The Zethar commander was cunning, and he would try again. Vorn was not one to retreat without a plan for vengeance. The ambush had worked, but the Zethar were not easily defeated. They were regrouping, adjusting their tactics, and preparing for the next phase of the war. The battle had given humanity a hard-won victory, but the Zethar were still a formidable force. As the Zethar flagship limped away, severely damaged but still intact, the question remained: could Earth truly survive the Zethar's wrath? Despite the damage, humanity had achieved something incredible. They had turned the tide. For the first time since the war began, the Zethar had been caught off guard, and humanity had proven that they were more than just survivors. They were fighters. "We've done it," Kane said, his voice steady but filled with relief. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over." The victory had come at a cost. Many ships had been damaged, and there were losses among the crew. But Earth had taken another step toward victory. The Zethar had been caught in their own trap, and now they were reeling from the consequences. As the Zethar flagship retreated, Commander Vorn stood at the helm, seething with rage. "This is not over, humans," he muttered to himself, his eyes burning with hatred. "You will pay for this." The escape of the Zethar flagship was a bitter reminder that Earth's victory was only temporary. But it was also a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when faced with the odds stacked against them. The underdog had won, and the Zethar had learned that they could no longer underestimate the humans they had once laughed at. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. They had the strength, the will, and the ingenuity to win. The battle for Earth's survival was just beginning, and Commander Kane and his fleet were ready for whatever came next. The tide had turned, but the war was still raging. Humanity's fight had only just begun, and they would not stop until they were victorious. The Zethar would learn that they had underestimated Earth again, and this time the humans would not let them go. The ripple effect of Earth's unexpected victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. News of humanity's survival against the overwhelming might of the Zethar Dominion reached every corner of space. Across alien empires and independent colonies, whispers began to circulate. What had once been seen as an insignificant primitive species now commanded respect. Some alien factions, once arrogant in their belief of superior power, began to question their earlier assumptions about humanity. The once dismissed Earth had become a symbol of defiance, a symbol of resilience. The war against the Zethar had brought Earth to the brink of extinction, yet it had also awakened something deep within the human spirit. This victory, though just a small part of the greater conflict, had revealed humanity's true strength. And now, every alien species watching from afar had to reconsider. Was humanity truly as primitive as they once thought? Dr. Elena Vargas sat in the quiet of the research lab, the hum of machinery the only sound breaking the silence. Her mind was heavy with the weight of the events that had unfolded. The battle had cost them dearly. Many lives had been lost, including the beloved Bonner, a soldier and friend. She had known the risks of their mission, but she never imagined that Earth would face such overwhelming odds. Despite the grief, there was an undeniable sense of pride that filled her heart. Sometimes victory is paid for in blood, she thought to herself as she stared at the flickering holographic display. The faces of fallen soldiers like Bonner haunted her, but she knew that their sacrifice had been for something far greater than just a battle. It was for the survival of Earth itself. The loss of the First Fleet, while devastating, had proven that humanity could rise above its limits, defying the expectations of even the most powerful alien races. But now, Earth was at a crossroads. The victory over the Zethar was short-lived, and with each passing moment, the true enemy behind the war made itself known. The Zethar Dominion, humiliated and enraged by their failure, had retreated to regroup and plan their next move. And now, they were coming back with a vengeance. The news was chilling. As the Zethar forces regained their composure, they began preparing their ultimate weapon, a weapon so terrifying that it could obliterate entire planets with a single strike. A superweapon controlled by a sophisticated AI, capable of ending humanity's existence in a fraction of a second. The Dominion's leaders had revealed the existence of this weapon to the rest of the galaxy, boasting of its power as though it were a trump card, their ultimate tool for destruction. The message from Commander Vorn was simple and direct. We will wipe Earth from the galaxy. No more mercy. No more games. The Zethar, having underestimated humanity before, now intended to make Earth pay the ultimate price. Their humiliation had ignited a fury that only a weapon of unimaginable power could satisfy. The human resistance, which had come so close to winning, was now facing its final test. Kane stood on the bridge of the flagship Excalibur, his face set in stone. He knew this could be the end of everything. The Zethar's superweapon, a massive AI-controlled war machine, was heading toward Earth, and with it came the promise of death for every living human on the planet. As the fleet prepared for what could be their last stand, Kane could hear the hum of engines, the voices of his crew preparing for battle. It was a stark reminder that even though Earth had managed to secure small victories, the real war was far from over. Belena's reflection on the past victory was interrupted by the emergency call that echoed through the ship's comms. "Captain, you need to see this." Kane's eyes narrowed as he listened to the report. The Zethar were coming, and they were coming with everything they had. The AI-controlled superweapon, codenamed Nemesis, had already destroyed several smaller human colonies along the Zethar route. Its sheer power and precision had caught Earth's allies off guard. The weapon could wipe out a planet in the blink of an eye, vaporizing entire cities in a single pulse. Earth had no time to prepare. The weapon was on a direct course for the homeworld. "We won't survive this unless we make a stand," Kane said, his voice low but resolute. "We need to buy humanity time. This is it, the final battle." The air on the bridge was tense as the fleet gathered at the final defense line. The atmosphere was thick with fear and uncertainty, but also with the knowledge that they had no choice but to fight. Earth's last line of defense was ready, but even with their advanced technology, they knew that taking on the Nemesis was no simple task. Belena approached Kane, her expression grim. "We've already lost so much, Marcus. So many lives. Can we really stop this thing?" Kane placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. "We'll try. We have to. For everyone we've lost. For Bonner." The Zethar fleet was closing in, and Earth's remaining warships were aligning their positions. The full scale of the Zethar forces was overwhelming, but humanity had no choice but to face it head-on. It was either fight or perish. The stakes had never been higher. As the enemy fleet approached, the final countdown began. Earth's defenses, scattered and damaged from previous battles, were barely functional. Yet every ship in the fleet was ready to make one final stand. Kane gave the order to activate all systems. Shields powered up, weapons primed, and the fleet's remaining fighters were launched into space. The sky above Earth darkened as the massive Zethar fleet loomed larger, their superweapon, Nemesis, just behind them, a terrifying symbol of the galaxy's greatest threat. "Captain, we've got incoming." "It's them. The Nemesis is on its way," shouted a communications officer. Kane's heart sank as he stared at the massive warship coming into view. It was enormous, dwarfing everything around it, a terrifying monstrosity that seemed unstoppable. The enemy was preparing to unleash hell, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. "We need to evacuate the civilians," Kane ordered, his voice steady, though inside, his mind raced. They couldn't win this battle, not without a miracle. As the fleet readied themselves for battle, Kane watched the Zethar forces slowly approach, knowing that the coming days would determine the future of the human race. The Zethar had promised Earth's destruction, and now it was time to pay the price. As Earth's final defense line braced itself, Kane took a deep breath, steeling himself for the fight to come. He knew that the upcoming battle would be the last chance humanity would ever have to survive. If they failed, Earth would be gone, and the galaxy would remember the humans as nothing more than a brief flash of light in the cosmos. With a final glance at his officers, Kane spoke the words that sealed their fate. "We fight, and we win, or we die trying." The battle for Earth's survival had begun, but whether humanity could stand against the wrath of the Zethar and their Nemesis weapon was still uncertain. The clock was ticking, and the countdown to humanity's final stand had begun. The vast emptiness of space was filled with the hum of battle. Earth's final defense fleet stood against the immense Zethar Dominion, their ships gathered in a last-ditch effort to protect the planet. The enemy fleet loomed like a storm, an unstoppable force that had already destroyed so much. But humanity was not about to go down without a fight. As Earth's warships formed their final line of defense, the stakes had never been higher. The Zethar Dominion's ultimate weapon, Nemesis, floated ominously at the forefront of their fleet. It was a massive AI-controlled superweapon, a creation of unmatched destruction. The Zethar had brought it to Earth to wipe out humanity once and for all. But humanity, having already defied their expectations, was now ready for the ultimate showdown. As the battle began, Earth's warships engaged the Zethar forces with everything they had. The sky above Earth erupted in a frenzy of explosions and flashes of light as both fleets exchanged fire. The Zethar ships, towering and menacing, fired devastating plasma blasts, while Earth's ships fired railguns and missiles, each shot aimed at halting the relentless advance of their enemies. The entire battle unfolded in a fast-paced sequence, with Earth's ships performing maneuvers that caught the Zethar forces off guard. It was a full-on space combat, an exchange of blows, with each strike threatening to obliterate entire fleets. The skies were filled with debris as ships exploded, their pieces floating through space, reflecting the chaos and destruction. The fight was intense, human and alien machines clashing, AI-controlled turrets on Earth's warships battling against the relentless assault of the Zethar drones. It was during this intense combat that Kane, commanding the Excalibur, found himself face-to-face with Commander Vorn, the leader of the Zethar fleet. The two leaders had fought their battles in space, but now, this final confrontation would decide the fate of their species. The stakes were personal. Commander Vorn, having lost his entire fleet, was furious and driven by vengeance. His cold, emotionless eyes glinted with hatred as he gave orders to target Kane's flagship directly. "Your species will perish, human." Vorn's voice echoed across the comms, his threat laced with venom. Kane's response was grim. "Not today, Vorn. Not while I'm still breathing." As the battle intensified, Kane's attention was diverted by a sudden warning signal. The AI-controlled Nemesis was charging its main weapon, a massive energy pulse that could annihilate entire fleets with a single shot. Kane knew that if it fired, Earth's last line of defense would be shattered, and humanity would have no chance. "We can't let it fire," Kane muttered, his voice tense. He turned to his crew, determination burning in his eyes. "Prepare to engage the Nemesis. This is it. We end this now." The battle raged on, but every move now seemed like a desperate attempt to outsmart the Zethar. As Earth's ships closed in on the Nemesis, explosions rocked the battlefield. The Zethar forces seemed unyielding, their advanced AI systems calculating every move with brutal precision. But humanity, for all its limitations, had something that the Zethar couldn't account for: heart. Meanwhile, back on Earth's flagship, Kane's mind raced. He had no idea how they could destroy the Nemesis, but there was no choice but to try. As the ship moved closer to the enemy's superweapon, Kane knew this could be the last mission of his life. They had to stop the Nemesis before it wiped out everything. But then, a tragic moment would change the course of the battle. Dr. Elena Vargas, the brilliant engineer and close friend of Kane, had been working tirelessly to help humanity fight back against the Zethar. She had been instrumental in developing the technology that powered Earth's warships, and she had spent countless hours making sure the fleet could stand against the Zethar threat. Elena had been by Kane's side through everything, and now she was about to make the ultimate sacrifice. As she worked to disable the Nemesis power core from the inside, a sudden explosion rocked the ship. Elena, caught in the blast, was killed instantly. The news of her death came through the comms like a punch to the gut, and Kane froze. He couldn't believe it. Alina had been a beacon of hope for humanity, and now she was gone. Kane slammed his fist against the console in frustration. No, not like this. But deep down, he knew that Alina's sacrifice was not in vain. She had given her life to save the future of Earth, and he would honor her sacrifice with his own. Filled with rage and grief, Kane knew what he had to do. He ordered the Excalibur to engage the Nemesis head-on, knowing it was a suicide mission. He had to make sure that this weapon, this symbol of the Zethers' power, was destroyed. The Nemesis fired a massive beam of energy at Earth's fleet, but Kane's ship dodged at the last second, weaving through the chaos of battle. In that moment, the ship's railguns fired, aiming directly for the weak spot in the Nemesis armor that Alina had once pinpointed. The beam from the railguns struck true, hitting the weapon's core. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through space. The Nemesis collapsed into itself, its AI control systems failing in an instant. The Zethar forces, in disbelief, watched as their superweapon was destroyed. With it, their hope of obliterating humanity vanished. The remaining Zethar ships, now leaderless and shattered, turned tail and fled. The battle was over. Earth had won. But it wasn't a victory without cost. Kane, injured and battered, watched as the Zethar fleet retreated into the depths of space. The Nemesis was destroyed, but so much had been lost. His friend, Alina, was gone. The fleet was devastated, and the survivors were left with the aftermath of a war that had taken everything from them. As Kane's ship floated amidst the wreckage, he sent a final message to the galaxy, a message that would echo through the stars. We are Earth, and we will never surrender. It was a message of defiance, of strength in the face of impossible odds. The Zethar had tried to break humanity, but they had failed. The Dominion was forced to retreat, but Kane knew this was not the end. The galaxy had seen humanity's power, and the cost of underestimating Earth was clear. But with that victory came the knowledge that the war was far from over. As Earth's remaining forces celebrated their victory, Kane stood on the bridge of the Excalibur, staring out into the void. The war was over for now, but he knew that the galaxy would never see humanity as weak again. New threats would rise, new enemies would come, but Earth had shown its true potential. And no matter what came next, humanity would always be ready.